What's up, everyone? I'm Alex Bass, and I'm the host and producer of the Life is a Tour podcast, where I have candid conversations with my BIPOC colleagues celebrating and navigating their experiences within the music industry. Today's guest is someone who has dedicated their life and career to supporting artists and preserving the cultural legacy of New Orleans. A true creative force, they're an artist manager, producer, cultural advocate, and Grammy nominated executive producer. They manage a diverse lineup of talent, including Pell, Satya, Big Chief Bo Dallas, and the Wild Magnolias. And they've co founded Global Warming and Them People Productions. Beyond their work with artists, they're deeply committed to advocacy, serving as a Recording Academy governor for the Memphis chapter and board president of the Music and Culture Coalition. They also share their expertise with the next generation as the director of the Trombone Shorty Foundation's Music Industry Apprenticeship Program. Please welcome to the show, Nate Cameron Jr. Nate, how are you today?
I am good. I'm good. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me in that illustrious intro. Thank you. I feel important.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you today. I know we just recently crossed paths with each other at the NOLA Music Con.
Shouts out to the Music Con. That's
Yes,
part of their mission was connecting folks, and we definitely connected and hit the ground running ever since.
we did. And it was really great to hear you on the panel talking about music education, especially within the community and the New Orleans community and with our youth. That was very inspiring conversation. So I'm happy to chat with you more. So Nate, you obviously have many roles within the industry. Talk us through all the different things that you do.
Yeah, first of all, everything that I do is always rooted in advocacy and empowering marginalized creative communities and marginalized communities in general, right? But I'm a creator, I'm a songwriter. I started off as a singer. I'm sure we'll talk more about my journey, but that's where I am. I have a unique view of having been signed as an artist, having been signed as a songwriter, as a producer, and then deciding, I wanted to go to school and learn more of the business side, and then started working on the executive side. And so I had this unique view of not being just an executive who knows nothing about being a creative, or not being a creative that knows nothing about the business side. And so a lot of what I do, like you said, from artist management to starting global warming to teaching the kids at Trombone Shorty, it's always about bringing the experiences I've been fortunate enough to have working for artists like Juvenile and working for some of these bigger labels and kind of learning the tricks of the trade. I always
Yeah.
noticed that New Orleans, and a lot of people always notice that New Orleans was behind the curve when it comes to music business infrastructure. And as a result of that, we've seen over and over again, pick a genre. Everybody knows a famous New Orleans artist that's had a bad deal, in
Right.
some way. You can go from hip hop to jazz to R&B. And so a part of what I wanted my legacy to be was to change that in some kind of way. How do we start to empower and educate our artists so that they hopefully don't sign some of these bad deals? They don't have to lean on people from outside of the community to run their businesses. At the heart of what I do, that's kind of what it is. I do a lot of stuff, but it's all about really making sure that our artists and creators and our culture bearers can know the value of what they have and be able to monetize that value and
Mhm.
be able to build legacy and push that forward.
That's amazing. On the topic of advocacy and financial literacy, what are some of the pitfalls that you see with some of these artists when they take these deals, and how can we avoid them?
That's a good one. Some of the pitfalls that I see, and there are a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
One of the main ones that I see that has been around for a long time is the put my people on, and I'll say put my people on without a plan method, right?
Right.
Like I don't know if the youngsters will know, but in my day, MC Hammer was a very well-known artist who was known for that. I think at one point, I spoke to somebody who was on his staff. At one point, MC Hammer had a staff of 102 people that he was paying full-time salaries for.
Wow.
Most were his friends. And a lot of people did a lot of good things, right? Production manager, tour manager, creative
Mhm.
directors, dancers, security, all that good stuff, drivers. But there were some people who were just people from Oakland, California, from the hood where he was from, that he just wanted to take off the street, take on the
Yeah.
road, show them a new life. But there has to be a delicate balance and a plan with dealing with that many people and doing something like that. So that ultimately didn't work out for him business wise. But I think that with a strategic plan and with intention, without that, trying to put folks on and try to help folks out can be very expensive in this day and age, right? And so that's the biggest thing that I see. And with that comes outside influence, right? So even more so than trying to pay folks bills, it's still trying to be a part of things that you just can't be a part of when you have a million followers now.
Yeah.
You when you're on a worldwide tour, there's certain people, certain places that even though you grew up accustomed to being there, you just can't be there anymore. You just can't do these certain things anymore. So those are the main ones that I see primarily with the age range of who I deal. I'm dealing with a lot of younger artists. And so those are kind of the bigger things is really planning out how you want to help your folks. I've seen some very smart artists put their friends through school or training or
Wow.
certifications to be some of the jobs that they wanted them to be, right? I won't name the artist, but I know somebody who put his friend through a 4-year college degree to be his tour manager. I mean, he went through like a marketing, obviously there was no degree in tour managing, right? But this is just a kid off the streets that he wanted to just get to college. He wanted to have that basic business. I think business admin was his minor, and that guy now has gone from tour managing to having a major business right now that has probably like 3 or 4 locations. But that all started from an artist that was well known at that time, investing into him and investing into his education as an
Right.
executive. And so I love that. That's kind of at the
I
core of
do
what
too.
I'm at.
That's amazing, and it's admirable, but at the same time, there's also this fine line of, like, you have to be able to take care of yourself first, right? Like, you can't take care of other people if
Amen.
you don't take care of yourself, and, like, it's tricky, especially when you're coming out of situations where you don't come from a lot of money or your family, they go through tough times, so, like, when you get to a point where you're like, "Oh, I
Yeah,
have this amount of wealth now, I have this amount of money," you're just like, "Oh, I wanna help you, I wanna help you, I wanna help you," which is great. But at the end of the day, you can't help everybody. And also, I think it's important for them to know it's okay to not be able to help everybody because it's not your responsibility. But it's tricky, especially on these young kids because it's hard for them. And it's like, I'm the only way out. I'm the only one that can
it
save my
is.
family. Da 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 da. And that is a heavy weight as a young person. And I'm sure you see that quite a bit.
No, that's a great point, and what I tell a lot of my folks that have come to me, a lot of my young folks or colleagues that have come to me with situations like that, it's like, look, first of all, just like you said, Alex, your well-being is the priority, right? You can't do nothing for nobody if you're not good. So that's the first off, right? And that might be understood to some people, but sometimes you need to hear it from somebody else, particularly somebody who you love and respect. Sometimes you just need to hear that, right? And the second thing too is that please know that you're just being here as an artist, your success in whatever pool of success it is within itself, particularly being a black artist, particularly we want to get even more specific, a black artist from New Orleans is a resistance within itself.
Yes.
You don't owe anybody anything else than just being who you are. And sometimes we get caught up in awards and yes, privileged to have been to the Grammys and all that good stuff, but sometimes just being who you are is enough. That's always
Yeah.
enough, right? But I have to remind them, like, of course we love the checks, of course we love the accolades, of course we love the tours to the exotic, beautiful places. But at the end of the day, 50 years ago, folks couldn't do what we were doing. There were not black tour managers 50 years ago. There were not black independent artists from New Orleans charting and getting Grammy nominated. These were things that our ancestors literally dreamed of. And so again, I just like, look, you just being here is a win. That's what I
Yes.
often tell them. Like, you just you is a win. Like you just you is a win. Everything else is just like we say back home, land yap. That's extra shit.
Period.
Like, but you just being here is a win. And then also too, just like you said too, helping people looks a lot of different ways. You know what? I didn't know at that point in my life, growing up uptown New Orleans, in a period of time where I literally grew up a mile away from the epicenter of No Limit, probably about 2 miles away from the epicenter of Cash Money, and had friends and colleagues and family members who were tied in, and so was fortunate enough to be in rooms. And guess what? I didn't know Master P like that at that point. I do now. I
Yeah.
didn't know Baby and them at that point, and I do now. But guess what? And I've told both of them independently, they inspired me by me just seeing that, by me just knowing that these guys literally proximity-wise grew up 2 miles away from me, the Calio projects where my people were from, the Magnolia projects where I go by every day. So to see somebody who goes through the same thing that I go through, succeed in the industry that I was already interested in was like, I don't even know if I would probably be in this, because that made me think like, oh, this is possible. Like
Yeah.
it's easy to see the Stax Records and the Motown Records, which are beautiful black established music entities, but those were in other places. And New Orleans, as you know, is different. We don't have the same trials everybody else has. We have very unique barriers. Our barriers
Very
are very,
unique.
very, very unique. We do have some that we share with our cousins and our homies in the Oaklands and the Detroits of the world, these black epicenters, right? There's some common black epicenter issues, but we have some very unique cultural issues down here. And so to see again somebody specifically come from where I came from do that, that was like, all right, I can run a label. And all right, I can manage artists. I've seen black managers. I've seen, the people that's worked with them. So yeah, I mean, that's to me, that is the win. Everything else is
Yes.
extra. We can give money. We obviously give time, expertise, listening to ideas. That is all valuable things once you become somebody who is famous or well known, or you become a master or respected craftsman in what you do. So yeah, I always tell them that too. It ain't all about money. Listen to their business
Yeah.
ideas, volunteer to hook up your manager to talk. I've had many folks be like, look, I got a cousin that's got a business idea. Nate, this is some of my artists. Like, hey, would you mind talking to them for 30 minutes? I told them I'd have my manager listen to their business plan and critique it.
Yeah.
Of course, like we can fit it in the schedule, and that is a value. That's something that somebody who doesn't know you would charge you many hundreds of dollars to do. So I just tell them that you are a valuable person, and that sometimes we just live in this white capitalistic society that thinks that all of our value turns into money. That all of our value
Mm.
is money. That is not all of our value. We had value way before money existed. You know what I'm
Period.
saying? And so like just being here, talking to folks, listening to folks. Yeah, I'll listen to my cousin's song. I can't listen to everybody's song. I can't listen to your whole album, but I'll listen to a song. I'll give you my input. No, I can't give you every phone number in my contact list, but I'll nudge you in some right directions. I'll help you to get ready or to a place where I feel like you can be shared to certain things. It's all about just knowing your inherent value all around, because listen, if money is all that's value, then I mean, I ain't got it. I ain't got it.
Listen.
I can give you some updates. I can give you a good word. I can give you a good book, a good website.
Right. That was very powerful. I think letting young people know that they are valuable, especially young Black people and brown people,
Yes.
because a lot of times our value is, it feels like it's stripped away and taken away, which is intentional, right? That's done on
Yes.
purpose because we are invaluable, you know? So I
Come
thought
on.
that was a very powerful statement. So what about with the contracts? What are you seeing as far as contracts and the bad deals? We talked about bad deals at the top of the show.
Yeah.
Tell us how some of these young people get roped into these bad deals, and what are some ways to avoid that from happening?
I think first of all, again, these deals are built on a system where it is artists are supposed to be coming into a system where they know, and it's okay for somebody to own just as much of your IP, intellectual property. For those who don't know what IP is
Mhm.
it's okay for somebody to own your IP equally as you who created it. You should just accept that as a norm. And so to me, I have a big problem with, now I do understand when an entity is putting work towards something and helping to push something, helping to get
Mhm.
something to another level, by all means, there should be some kind of buy-in. There should be some kind of equity involved.
Sure.
This is not me saying that you shouldn't own anything, but I just think that the expectation of equality when it comes to labels and other bigger entities many times is just not fair, right? It doesn't allow the artists to own their IP in perpetuity, you know what I'm saying? Which a lot of times is the issue. So what I mean is that you will have an entity that will approach one of the artists and say, hey, we have a song that we'd love for the label to buy or purchase or to do something with, or maybe for one of our artists. And you know what? We'll pay you a flat fee for that song. And it's
Mhm.
a nice little number, it's a flat fee. And you know what? We would rather you not make any money on the back end of it. We just want to kind of pay you up front for it. And then we completely own it. You
Right.
wipe your hands of it. We get the documentation of that. Also, we'll throw you a little extra to take your name off the credits, because
Mm.
we're probably going to get another producer to say that they produced this. probably a producer that we have signed. So we want to get his profile up or their profile up, right? And so we'll likely take that and want to do that. And so that's just an example of many. A lot of the general public probably don't know that things like that even go down. Now, there are other situations where there are bigger known producers, who have staff. Now, that's not what I'm talking about. They definitely are bigger. Your Timberlands, your Pharrell, some of these bigger producers who obviously have tons of workload. Your Dark Childs, they have staffs of folks that works for them. So sometimes they're guiding things or they're directing somebody to do something. That's co-production in a different way. Not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is labels or entities coming in and being like, let me pay you a certain amount of money to put somebody else's name and credit on what you've done and what you've created.
That's wild.
It's very niche. That's one
Yeah.
thing I've seen grow. Particularly more
Mm.
because I'm working more with producers, and now the
Mhm.
producer deals are growing and becoming a little bit more popular than they were before, particularly in the hip hop and R&B space. When we were coming up, there were like 12 hip hop producers and R&B producers that were black in the industry, and you went through them, and that was it. Now we're starting to see, which is dope, a growing sector and segmentation of like all those different producers and levels. But with that, again, comes the sharks and the exploitation. That's one thing I'm seeing. And the other thing, just to be completely honest, is preying on the financial situations of artists, just like we talked about. These artists that are coming from areas that they don't have a lot of money and preying on artists that do not know the industry and that don't know the
Right.
game. We live in a world right now where I think somebody told me 45% of, because the Black Music Collective did this report, I believe it's somewhere around 45% of black artists that charted last year that were new, that never charted, were because of TikTok, or because their song blew up on
Right.
TikTok, right? Which is dope. I love that we have different platforms to get our things out there, different ways to be visible and be our authentic selves without these middlemen of sorts, right? I
Yeah.
love that. What I don't love is that now these bigger entities are like, here's somebody who now in a 2-week span has 5 million people engaging with daily, right? And they have this one song and they don't really know anything about IP. They don't know how to monetize their music outside of what they've done with TikTok or any other social media platforms. Maybe I can take them in, throw them a chunk of money, put them in an influencer house, give them a nice car, give them some perks, and little do these folks know, yes, you're living a good life, but sometimes these artists have no idea that they're generating sometimes X's of 7 times more than what they're seeing. And there's all these other people eating off of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's just kind of the main thing is like wanting artists to know, which is why we do things like the Trombone Shorty Academy, because it's like no matter if you want to be an artist, a producer, a manager, a rigger, a tour manager, whatever, you need to know how the money flows in this industry because
Yeah.
it's just good business to know where, how this industry, as you know, is a very gate kept, right? It's traditionally been a
Absolutely.
very gate kept industry. You don't get the gig with so and so until so and so blesses you, or this tour manager recommended this tour manager when they left. There's hardly ever any public LinkedIn job postings for these band or tour gigs, right? It's very much
Never.
how you've worked with someone and someone recommending you. And so it's cool in a way, right? I love that sometimes, but then in other times it's like, if you're on the outs, you're on the outs.
You're right.
And a lot of times folks that look like you and I, we were on the outs traditionally, and that was intentional. But I think that now that things are changing, things are shifting. There are companies now that are doing tremendous things. There are people like us that are out there that are pushing it forward, that are doing it and working with folks. Shout out to Geo and Fatima, all our other New
Yes, yes,
Orleans black
yes.
tour managers stage. Like there's just people doing fantastic things. I think that's what pushing it forward looks like. And that's what it feels like. It's like really just embracing and showing folks that that's even possible.
Yeah. And I mean, when it comes to the business, I can say the same for myself. I'm not a musician, but I'm on the production side. And I actually just started my company over the past few years. Like I've been just operating as a independent
Nice.
contractor for so long. And I was like, well, I want to operate as a business, not just like I'm Alexandria, but now I'm like, this is life as a tour production. It's like when you hire me, you're hiring my company. But even then, I'm still learning and growing and trying to figure out how to run a business and what this looks like for me and what I want it to look like in
Of
the
course.
future. So, yeah, I just think it's important what you guys are doing with the organizations that you're at because the business is sometimes not sometimes, a lot of times we don't know anything about it. And in this business you kind of get thrown into everything. Like, when I started, I just jumped in. I was like, I don't know
Yes.
what I'm doing here, but I'm here and y'all gonna have to work with me and figure it out. We gonna figure this out together, basically.
Alex, when Tank asked me to be her tour manager, it was a month before they did Coachella.
Oh wow.
And so, like, I might have advanced 2 shows before having to advance Coachella. And not only was this Coachella, but the year that they did this, they were opening for Beyonce. This was the Baychella year. So this was
Wow.
Coachella on steroids, right? So, I'm like, "Wait a minute." I advanced the show at, like, Gasa Gasa. For people who don't know, in New Orleans, it's like a 50, 75 person room. I
Yes,
had
yes.
advanced the show at, like, the Balloon Festival in Birmingham, Alabama, which was a little bit bigger. And then from there, Coachella. Totally on you. You're running the show. We had 17 people on tour with us that I had to manage between staff, band, all the good things. Everything turned out fine. But when you talk about being thrown in,
Yeah.
listen,
Yeah.
thrown in. No pressure, just one of the biggest, most popular festivals in the world. And
Yeah.
it's on you for the next 45 minutes to make sure all this goes together right. No, everything turned out fine. It was all good, but thrown in.
Yeah, seizing the opportunity. I mean, if you're really in it and if you're really passionate about it, you'll figure it out. It'll be tricky, it'll be a little nerve-wracking, but like, you'll figure it out. And I always encourage people, especially young people, just go for it. If this is something you're really interested in and you really want to do it, talk to people and just just fucking do it. So we talked a little bit about you mentioned executives. How do we get more black people, brown people into these executive spaces?
My dad would always say, "You have to see it to be it," right? God rest his soul. I
Mhm.
would always, when I was younger, I was like, I don't wanna hear that. What does that even mean?" But as I got older and as I started to move into some of the positions that I'm in, I see the value of just seeing someone that looks like you in a position, right? Or in a certain position. Like I spoke to earlier, just me seeing the impact of a Master P and of a Birdman and Slim Williams build a independent black music entity from uptown New Orleans using nothing but creators and producers from New Orleans and then bringing those to major entities and being able to sell or partner with those entities on their own terms. That to me, seeing that not only just once, like it's crazy for one thing to come out of New Orleans in that time as a No Limit, but to have two, like a No Limit and a Cash Money, No Limit dealing with Priority Records at the time, which was huge. Cash Money dealing with Universal at the time, which is still huge, right? So again, kind of nerding out and seeing those partnerships form encouraged me to get my degree in music business. Oh, I can do that. So that's the first thing. It's like seeing more is, folks that are in these positions being willing to talk to the youth, being willing to drop some jewels, being willing to be anti-gatekeepers. It's a healthy balance of, like you said, taking care of yourself, doing what you need to
Absolutely.
do, making sure the main thing is the main thing, but also prioritizing and finding times to pour into that next generation. And much like we talked about earlier, there's different ways to do that. It's not just about donating money, which is good. It's not just about donating time, which is also good. But sometimes there's different ways we can move,
Yeah.
to make sure that we're ensuring that that next generation is taken care of and that we're doing our job to make sure the ladder isn't pulled up, or we're not greasing the ladder so that when they're coming up, they're slipping off of it. You know what I'm saying?
Listen,
It's our job to make sure
not the
that they can
grease.
climb that ladder. Listen, because I done been on a lot of greasy ladders from some oders and elders. You know what I'm saying? And God bless them or whatever. You never know what folks' trauma is and why they do what they do. But I have been very adamant about always making sure that my mentees are folks that I talk to that look to me for advice within this industry that are black. Let them know that you don't have to be a slime ball in this industry to be successful. You don't have to mess people over to be successful in this industry. You don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to ice people out. You don't have to treat anybody any kind of weird ways. I know we see different music executives
1000%.
that are legendary that are known for, certain attitudes and swags, and that's just not who I am. I was taught to treat everybody the same way. So when I enter a venue like a Coachella or a Madison Square Garden, I run in the show, I'm talking to the investor who is paid for all this to happen, just like I'm talking to Miss Jane who worked in concession or Mr. Mike who back there mopping the floors. I'm giving everybody the same level of respect. And so with that, and there's more people and there's more folks like us in the community who believe that and who are acting on that. There's more good business happening. And so that's my thing. You don't have to be a slime ball. You don't have to be messing people over. You don't have to be this misogynistic jerk. That's another thing I'm really adamant about. As somebody who grew up and was raised by my single black mother and her three single sisters who lived right next door and my grandmother, I literally was raised by four black women. So I don't play that anyway. But anyway, I mean, outside of that, like,
Period.
you don't have to have this misogynistic view and things have to move. Like, again, that's buying into that whole capitalistic white supremacy culture. So I try to dismantle that in every way that I can.
Come on, Nate. Speak on
When
it.
I'm working with Tank and them, and my partner Tavi is there, and sometimes they'll directly come to me. And even if I do have the answer, sometimes I'm like, you know what? I'm not running the show. I'm sorry you assumed. Or I'll ask her, what made you assume you got an email and we both have the same title on that email. What made you direct this to me? Why didn't you ask her that? And so sometimes it's a quick fumble and apology, and otherwise it's like, wait, I've had some folks to be like, you know what? I want to check myself. That's my bad, or apologize
Yeah.
to her. But it's chipping away at little stuff like that is kind of what I'm on, because a lot of it is built up on BS and it's the cause for a lot of stagnation and evolution within the industry in a lot of ways, right? And so I am anti-gatekeeper as they come. I,
I
I
love that.
believe in sharing resource. I believe in sharing context when it's appropriate,
Yes.
right? You can't share
Yes.
everything with everybody because I have to preserve my good business entity, right? But if I am
Absolutely.
helping you to get to a level where I can share your contact with somebody because I see that you are there, then of course, right? But yeah, nah, man, it's listen, we can all get this paper. We can all get this paper and everybody can do what they do, but it's just about being intentional and being in community and
Yes.
knowing how to be in community.
That's the one. Community. That's the one. And you're right when it comes to the gatekeeping. It's tricky because I feel like, and I hate to say this, but I do feel like it happens even more so amongst us within our community. And I think that just comes from this fear of things being taken away, right? Because we've worked so hard to get to these positions and to
Yeah.
get in these roles that you don't normally see us in. So once you get there, there's this deep rooted fear of like, I don't want this taken away from me, even if it is from someone who looks like me, or like, I don't wanna just take my chances on bringing somebody else up the ladder. Like you said, let me just grease it. Like, I'll help a little bit, but Imma put some grease on it because I don't want you moving too fast. I don't want you coming up beside me too
Listen,
quickly. But I'm just like, there is power in numbers. There is power in that. Like, and we belong to be here. We belong here. And when you see all these amazing Black artists with all of these almost all white teams, executive teams, I'm like, "Ugh." Like, to me, it's, I don't know. There's something
yeah.
about that for me.
Listen, it twists me the wrong way every time, right? And you spot on. One of my OGs, this is Pastor Tom Watson, who was my pastor growing up for Watson Memorial. Shout out to Pastor. He would always say the tenet of white supremacy is creating a scarcity mindset and a fear mindset in the black community, right? And so just
Yes.
like you said, there's a fear that I don't really want to share this because something might happen. You may take something from me. And then there's this scarcity mindset that there's only this finite amount of resources, and that if
Right.
I share any of mine to you, then there's this perception and that lessens my pot, right? Because when they give the analogy of the crabs in a barrel that we've all heard, right? The whole crabs in a barrel. The other side of that is that it's a barrel. A barrel is not a bunch of, like, there's a finite amount of water, there's a finite amount of space, right? And
Yes.
when you think about a barrel compared to the sea or the ocean, where these crabs would be if they were living freely anyway, like, there's no comparison to the amount of space and water. And so to create and to make us feel like, you know what, there's only so much money y'all can make. So if you're going to share a resource, you're going to share how you're making yours, then you're probably going to lose some of yours. That is not the case. There's so many ways to now more than ever to monetize many different things within the music industry, many different jobs. I think you spot on that fear and that scarcity is what makes people hold on tight to those things.
Yeah.
It just doesn't create an ecosystem, which is what I'm all about. Like ecosystems have many things thriving.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow, that was that was deep. I like that, the ecosystem. I know we're talking a lot about bringing up the young people within these spaces, especially getting them more informed on executive roles. But are you seeing
Yeah.
a shift now amongst us in our generation? Are you seeing a shift in more of us in these roles and more of us in these C suites and executive spaces and higher up management?
Yes, I am definitely. There's a huge swing, right? And even more important, because to be completely honest, the big part of that swing was a lot of corporations felt the need to implement DEI and to have
Mm,
black faces when folks were getting some crap, right? So there was a swing because of that, which I have mixed feelings, right? There's some people that deserve to be there that got to be there during that period,
yeah.
just as there were some people who weren't supposed to be there. But as everything, checks and balances, right? But what I am seeing now and within that community is just more coalitions being like the Black Music Coalition that we talked about, or it's just like what we talked about, just local folks like ourselves. A lot of the Black tour managers and managers here in New Orleans and Louisiana, a couple of us are on chats together, like little micro things like that. There's a gathering, I don't know if you know about, but there's a thing that Aaron Frankenheimer does here in New Orleans that's called No Agenda, NO Agenda. It's a monthly lunch for managers. Now
Mm,
that's not just Black, that's everybody, right? But
sure.
yeah, but there's little things like that that are kind of happening. People are being more intentional. People are not guarding their stuff as much. We're sharing information. We're collaborating more. PJ's on Tank's album. Tank's on PJ's album. Trombone
Mm,
Shorty and John Baptiste just went to Tiny Desk to go help out Juvie was his new tour run. Like all these different, all the young leaders of our community in that aspect are working together in different ways. And that has not always been the case. So I think that's power within itself, just having intention and collective intention. We don't all have to think and do the same thing. And
yeah.
and and we can all work together to push some stuff forward. So I'm seeing a lot of these bands and artists who I named who also have intentionally put younger, unsigned Black New Orleans artists on their work or hired Black teams, Black tour managing teams, Black drivers from back home, video teams from back home, talent for video. So I think just that intentionality and seeing these executives and some of these C suites start to have some of that mentality. And some of these people in those C suites, some of these Black folks were folks that are coming from the ground up. So it's not just somebody who came from a business class and went straight to the president of a label. These are people who started as your TMs, your roadies, worked themselves up and A&Rs and then got up to president. And so because of that, the good thing of that is that you've seen and experienced all the different levels and you have an appreciation and hopefully a different kind of empathy for the folks that are in those realms.
I love to hear about the progression within the industry, specifically within New Orleans, because like you said, people don't know like New Orleans is a very unique space and we're just so culturally different from everybody. And there's a lot of cultural nuances that folks don't know about. So to hear that we're on a progressive track and that more folks are really, like you said, community. We're really bringing in the community and supporting each
Yeah.
other. I love to hear that.
And we still got some ways to go, but there's progress.
Absolutely, and that's a great thing to see. Obviously, the undertone of this episode has been around advocacy, supporting people, bringing people up. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do at the Trombone Shorty Foundation? Also, I am happy to announce that I'm officially a mentor of the Trombone Shorty Foundation. So I'm very
What?
excited to have a mentee.
Yes, we're excited to have you. Thank you for accepting the offer. So
Thank
yes,
you.
I work with the music industry apprenticeship program at the Trombone Shorty Foundation. That is a new program that's about 3 years old. So the Trombone Shorty Foundation has two sides. It's the music industry apprenticeship program for those that are interested in learning about the different jobs within the industry. And then there's the traditional original program, which what we call the academy. That is where young musicians learn instrumentation, there's different bands, different ensembles, but that's more the musician side, and we have the industry side. So on the industry side, I've been blessed to be a part of that. I was brought on by Ashley. Shout out to Ashley, who was one of your recent
Yes.
guests, one of my really, really, really dear friends, and a very dope person, and a very
Mhm.
essential person to our arts community in New Orleans. So yeah, shout out to Ashley. But I was brought on by Ashley very early in the game just to be a thought partner about what our youth needed. How could a program affect our youth? How could a program sustain our youth and allow our youth to be themselves while also learning hands-on, but also being paid, also being held accountable and learning career development, artist development, and personal development, right? At the same time,
Yes.
trying to find a way to marry all of those in one way. So again, 3 years later, we're blessed to have this is cohort three. This is cohort three,
Amazing.
and blessed to have some dynamic youth. This program is a program that goes on for 8 months. They're with us twice a week for 3 hours. And again, like I say, we go through everything from personal development, how are we setting up bank accounts personally, taxes, all those kind of good things, getting them ready and in line for stuff like that. Career development, we're obviously introducing them to many different jobs and many dope people like yourself. Shout out to Alice who came and talked to our youth, and they
Yes.
had all the questions and it just intrigued them and inspired them. It goes back into what I said earlier, like you got to see people and know that people do that. One of my people came back and was like, I didn't know young Black people could live where Miss Alex said she was living like that. I thought that was some,
Oh my God.
retired,
I
you
love
had to
that.
have done all these things. And so just for them to be inspired and say that they've looked that up, for them to say that, just for that young lady to be like, oh my goodness, like what? Like that was so cool to meet somebody who's doing that and working for themselves and living. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying, Alex. Like sometimes us just being us and accomplishing what we've accomplished is already inspiring the homies and the communities or whoever else. You know what I'm saying? So that's exactly what me and Ashley wanted to build was, how do we figure out we have all these great friends who are doing all these great things like yourself. How do we empower them by getting them to tell their stories to these youth who I'm sure they will inspire and empower? And so yeah, I do that in a myriad of ways. We meet at the New Orleans Career Center, which is a very, very, very dope facility and a dope program. If you don't know about them, go and check them out. They're giving our youth many different career pathways. And so we're just blessed to be the first music program in that building to do that. But yeah, man, we're really just trying to introduce these youth to all the different jobs that go on behind the scenes and just listen to them and see what they're drawn towards. And whatever they're drawn
Mhm.
towards, we do our best to try to get them some hands-on, on-site training, obviously some mentor, some one-on-one mentorship with some very dope people. And we take care of our folks. That's another core tenet, I think, because like I said, I come from a culture of working at labels that looked at New Orleans as a place they could exploit very cheaply and easily. And so I am always big on paying our culture bearers and our people for their time, particularly our Black and brown ones, paying our young folks for their time, particularly our Black and brown ones. And so that's also a core tenet is that everybody who pours into the program in any kind of way, whether it's the youth that are pouring their enthusiasm and who they are into the program, or it's the mentors, or it's any kind of staff partners. I mean, that's something that is a core tenet of ours. Try to shift them away from this. Oh, you work in entertainment. There should be an expected amount of volunteerism you should want to do. But yeah, just really just opening their eyes to what's going on. We try to connect them into the ecosystem that already exists here. So all of them work, all of the major festivals from your French Quarter festivals to your Jazz Fest. We connect them with all of those different things so that they have job opportunities and they can see some of the bigger things that happen in the city. And of course, the smaller rooms, smaller clubs as well. But yeah, we just want to open their eyes to see that there's a bigger world of the music ecosystem than what they listen to on their Spotify playlist.
That's amazing. I'm so one, I'm very happy to be a part of this foundation, and I think it's such amazing and important work because when I was coming up, we didn't have that type of resource. And it's not only are you supporting the musicians, which I feel like the
Yeah.
musicians tend to have a few more resources than the folks working behind the scenes, the crew, the production workers. So to have a program that
Yes.
pushes forward those types of career goals is really phenomenal. So I applaud you guys for the work that you're doing. I think it's really beautiful and amazing. And I'm very happy to be a part of it. If people want to support the foundation or support any of these other organizations that you work with, how can people do that?
So Trombone Shorty Foundation, if you're on IG, or their website is just tromboneshortyfoundation.org. And you can get all their socials from that. Global Warming, which is my collective, my organization, that is GLBLWRMNG. So it's Global Warming without the vowels. The website is globalwarming.com. My IG is Global Warming. My personal website is natecameronjr.com. So if you want to be lazy and find all of those things on one place, that's the easiest way to do it. And I'm on IG as Suave is here, SUAVEISHERE.
Copy that. Nate, is there anything you want to leave us with before we go? You've been dropping gems this whole time, but if there's any last little tidbit you want to share with the audience, with the youth, with anybody.
I would say make sure that we empower, appreciate, and go beyond. I'm talking to my fellas now because, again, I want to go back to appreciating and pouring into our Black women within this industry, right? I know this is not
Mhm.
in any industry, this is tough, but working in this industry, I've hands-on seen and having partners and artists that are Black women and that are successful Black women in this space. I've seen a lot of different things. I know we talked about it more, but I oftentimes challenge myself and my other brothers of color that are within this industry. What are we doing to empower our sisters? Obviously, as we see, you're talking about these execs and people at these tables. The bulk of these are Black women. Black women have been killing it in this industry. A lot of my mentors within this game were Black women and still are, and have been doing it forever. And to me, most of them do not get the flowers that they deserve. And so, that's what I would leave is that if you're coming into this industry, somebody new, appreciate and know who's doing the work and who to pour into. And if you are a masculine energy moving into this space,
Mhm.
particularly Black, I would say, what I'm saying, make sure that we are holding our Black women that are leading and that are anywhere within this space to the highest regard that we can, and that we're advocating for them even when they're not in the room. So that's just something I want to leave and challenge our folks with. And for our Black women out there, we see y'all, we appreciate y'all. We know that you all are the anchors of this industry in a bunch of different ways, on a bunch of different levels,
Mhm.
and we're already doing better. But we're gonna do better holding y'all down. But we get
Listen.
we got this, and beautiful to see this Blackness take over everywhere, even in the country. They mad, but
Yeah, they
we here.
bad. We are here, Nate. We are here. I can't think of a better way to end this episode. That was amazing. Nate, I am so happy we got a chance to talk. Hopefully, we will get to do this again. I want to thank you for coming on to the show. And thank you all for listening to the Life is a Tour podcast.